Hello, and welcome to the 7th series. My name is Melody Brooks, and I'm here with the one and only Dani Darling.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Dani, I know that you were a 2021 fellow for Amplify, Washtenaw, and I'd love to hear more about your story with that organization.
So I heard about Amplify. It was during the pandemic. So there was a lot of unrest. It was a lot of staying in the house, and it seemed like there was not a lot of movement going on, but I was just really always playing my guitar and making videos. I felt like that was a way that I was connecting to people who had come to my shows before. And it seemed like that was really resonating with people, me doing all of these covers of just any song I could think of that I think people would like or would make them feel better, since everyone was stuck at home. And so then the Amplify came up, and then I applied and I got it. And it just really, I know a lot of people say that their COVID experience was harrowing, but mine was actually really amazing. As a single black mother and a black person, I think I would have never gotten out of the wheel if it hadn't been for the pandemic. And then having Amplify, find me during that time, is kind of everything just came together perfectly. So it was awesome.
That is wonderful. And when you were a part of the Amplify project, did you guys get to do any shows together?
We did. It was a Leon, it was called a kickback that we did, me and Kenyatta in London. And it was really cool. We also had a really cool listening party when we were all done with our projects, and all came here and listened to all of our projects and danced, and it was just so amazing. I just really feel like my fellows are my family now, and London's my little sib, and I just really I would love to do more shows, but that was a great performance that we had together.
I love that, and I loved hearing about that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that typically within the Amplify project, all of the fellows typically have their own musical project that they create. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say I'm a super fan of your project, The Future.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. I would just love to hear about your project and you.
Okay, so with The Future, it was we got this fellowship. I had my band. We were okay, so we got to write this music. And I think the first thing we wanted to do was just get together and jam, because we hadn't all gotten together in one room in a really long time. So we got together, and it was winter solstice 2020, and it was our first jam session together. And we just started vibing. Taylor T. Greens, if you will, was the sound person that they had placed me with for the fellowship. And we start playing, and we're we need a drummer. Get over here. So then Taylor got behind the drums, and we just started jamming, and it just felt like this psychedelic, I don't know, it was this ambient. We went for 20, 25 minutes on one song, and we got done. We were whoa. I was let's do this again on New Year's Eve. And so that's the night we basically wrote The Future, was New Year's Eve, was that next couple weeks later.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And as a band geek, I just noticed that you tend to use a lot of instruments like flute, mm-hmm. Bass, sometimes some horns like trumpets.
Yeah.
Is that always intentional? Do you feel like it makes it sound more full?
Yeah, I definitely think when I first started out as an artist, I was very lo-fi, but that was very much because of limited resources and abilities when it comes to production. And so Amplify was the first time that I had this budget and this opportunity to work with a bunch of artists and stuff. So I feel if I had my wish every time, it would be high fidelity. It would be horns, strings, all the things, especially since for The Future, my inspiration was very much the 70s and that whole time period. So it was Dark Side of the Moon was a big influence. Stevie Wonder, just that 70s vibe was very lush. So I think the horns really add to it, and it makes live shows so much fun. So yeah, I love it.
Absolutely. And like when you say how it makes like live shows even more fun, like having a band, I absolutely agree with that. I think the first time that I saw you perform was at the 2023 Ann Arbor Summerfest, rocking out. I remember your Hit Me.
Yeah.
And that song, that was from the song La Femme, right?
La Femme, yep.
Okay, could you talk a little bit about that song?
So when it comes to just that project, like I was trying to get all of like, I was like, oh, I gotta get all my favorite parts of the 70s in this project. So I had my Dark Side of the Moon, my psychedelic song, and then I had my, I felt like I had my disco song with The Future, but I wanted to do something funk. And like, for me growing up, James Brown was a really, really big influence. So like, I wanted it to be like if James Brown was like a feminine Diana Ross type voice. And so I wrote this song. And the interesting thing is that we did the music first. So we recorded all the music. And then I like to do my vocals by myself a lot of times. So I sit down after we got the horns and the sax, like everything together. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to do a vocal part that matches everything that they're doing, because we had the hits and stuff, so it was like ready for you to like pop in the vocals, but I was like, oh my goodness. So writing the vocals was very, very interesting. Like I used to study vocal music growing up and in college, and I would say that La Femme was every bit as hard as like any aria or art song that I ever had to do. It's a lot of technique behind that style of music. And I think just singing James Brown, it looks easy, but it actually takes a lot of effort and technique to get that kind of sound. So that was probably one of the hardest songs I've ever recorded. So it's a lot of fun though, live.
It sounds like a lot of fun. And just to expand a little bit, do you know how long it typically takes you to write a song?
I think it really depends. I'm a Gemini, so I'm all over the place. There's some songs that take me years, and then there's some songs that I do in like 20 minutes. I think for The Future, it was like one night. We did a lock-in because no one else was doing anything else for the weekend, and it was. We got 7 hours, we locked in, we just played and played and played, and then we had all of this rolling footage of all these songs, and it's like, okay, now I gotta turn like 6 hours of music into a project. So I would say it kind of depends on the process. So that one took like weeks and months, but I think typically from soup to nuts, typically about 6 months to a year for a whole idea to matriculate for me. I always joke that I was born into a girl group because the three of us were like harmonizing before I could do complex sentences. So like it was really, really like from a very young age of like singing in church, and we'd make our own little musicals and have our dear mother sit and listen and watch our performances. And so it started with the singing, and then got into classical music senior year. I played violin. I was in choir. I was a total geek. So my life has always been like very, very musical. It just kind of depends on what period of time, which kind of music I was hyper focused on. But I'm always hyper focused on some kind of music. So
thank you. And who inspires you artistically? Would you say that it's still your family members? Is it any like famous icons, or is it kind of like a mix of people?
It's definitely a mixture of people. My sisters are an inspiration just because like singing with them, and that's where those are my number one collaborators. I also love, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Motown. So Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder is definitely at the top of the list. His songwriting is just impeccable. And then also like certain things that you wouldn't necessarily think. Like I like alternative. I like Radiohead. I like Erykah Badu. It's just a lot across the spectrum of genres. I really have gotten into disco lately. So, it just really depends on when. But I think when it comes to live music, I've found that the more upbeat and the more fun the set is, the more I enjoy myself. So I think my set has gotten bigger and bolder and more up-tempo recently. So
I love that. And I feel like when you don't just like, in terms of listening, when you listen to different artists and like pick things from different genres, it makes your music more interesting. And I love your music.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Of course. Going back to your music and your project, The Future, I would love to know just like the thought and just your thought process behind your Made It Back interlude.
Okay, so with the Made It Back interlude, so I definitely wanted to do like a kind of retro vibe, like very like, I was thinking Dark Side of the Moon. I was thinking about Marvin Gaye, what's going on, especially with everything that was happening with George Floyd and the unrest and civil rights and the oppression of Black people that's so systematic, and that was really kind of like the curtain was pulled back on how devastating it is, and there's a lot of community devastation. So we're in the studio, we're like on hour 3 or 4, I think, and my bassist at the time, Yosef, he went and popped over to the store across the street. And so when he got back, we were just kind of fooling around. I was on the mic and I'm like, you went to the store and you made it back. Because, as a Black man, that's not necessarily a given, like it was something to celebrate that he was a Black man, went to the store and he made it back, no issues. And so we started getting a little crazy with it, and it felt really like psychedelic and organic. So I'm like, leave it in there. Let's keep that. So that's the backstory to the Made It Back.
Thank you. And then, of course, like piggybacking off of that, I really enjoyed your song, The Sublime. I do know that some of the events within that song mention the unfortunate killing of George Floyd, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
What inspired you to implement those events within the music as well, like incorporating those elements?
I think what inspired that in the video is that was what was going on around us when we were in the studio, but there was so much going on, whether it was like the quiet of people not being on the roads or at work, and then also the unrest with the protests and stuff. And I think what I wanted the future to be was kind of like an escape, and to be kind of like a journey into like a different place, because I think like that's kind of where being an artist, right, kind of takes you to a different place. If you're in a place where you're going through difficulty, like there's so many strategies to be able to cope with things like that, like to stay in the house for a year, or see what's happening to people that the same color as you and keep going. So I think for me, doing The Future, it felt like instead of writing songs that are like activism, I wanted to just create like a world that I was creating in my own mind and in my own dreams of like kind of away from everything that was happening. So in the video, I was like, let's just put that in there, because it just really kind of encapsulates what the escape was from.
Thank you. And do you have any performances or releases or just projects in general that you want to talk about?
I'm working on a new project, yes. As far as performances, I don't really have many that are lined up right now. At the end of the summer of 2021, I was devastated by a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. Like I was on stage at Will's Show Bar, and all of a sudden I went to sing, and like nothing was coming out right. And like I was in this fog, and it was like they found out that there was this really big lesion. They thought it was a tumor on my brain, and I couldn't phonate. So ever since then, it's been like a journey to get back to writing. I always say that like the pandemic was awesome for me. It wasn't until like the end of 2021 that like my world like kind of came crashing down. So I think when it comes to music, it will be that's what it'll be about. And I think it's really still an ongoing journey to deal with, an illness like MS, like a chronic illness, and figure that out, as well as how to keep performing. And I can't do it at the same pace I did before, but to keep also creating. So soon is the short answer.
Thank you for sharing that. And the fact that you're here today really says something. So thank you.
Thank you.
So another song of yours that I just really enjoyed was The Age. I was like, this is so like calm and soothing. I would just love to know what The Age means to you, the process behind it, and just what is the age of Aquarius?
Okay, so a lot of people around here know that I'm actually an astrologer. I'm a certified Hellenistic or ancient astrologer, if you will. So, and I know you're a Sag, double Sag.
Yes, I am.
So I think for me, a lot of people are into it. It's kind of become a fad of sorts, but like I've been in it deep for a long time. And I think for me, a lot of the easy part of astrology is just knowing when things are happening and observing and being in awe of the universe, right? And so truthfully, I don't think anybody really knows exactly what the age of Aquarius or when it starts. Some people said it was the 70s. Some people say that, Pluto just moved into Aquarius like a month ago, and that's the real age of Aquarius. But I think it's an idea. I think it's an idea of a time when, like, things will be better, where, like, the veil between this world and the next is thinner, and we get less concerned with like our day-to-day. Like in my mind, it's kind of like an upset of capitalism. Like, but I think in everybody's mind, it's like whatever you dream a future in the distance to be. So for the age of Aquarius, I felt like it seemed like I wanted to sound like planets were moving, like you were in outer space. And so Yosef had this reverse delay pedal, which was amazing. And so it was like that wah, wah sound. And I was like, it sounds like the planets would sound. I know the planets don't have a sound, or if they do, you can't hear it. But for me, I was like, yeah, let's just go with some like cosmic stuff that is open to interpretation. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And also, with us just coming out of Black History Month and March being Women's History Month, how does that make you feel as a Black woman who cultivates art through music?
I think it's always a good opportunity to highlight people of color and women. And I think I wish it was every month. But I think what's important is just, as a Black woman, it's still harder in the music industry. I think, we like to think that there's a lot of progress that's been made, but in some ways it's still a long way to go. So I think that when it comes to those kinds of times where we're focused on highlighting or uplifting or encouraging artists that are women or Black artists especially, it's very important. I think it makes a difference to get that kind of recognition and support as an artist, because I think there are some difficulties that we face, right? So I don't know, I hope that during that month we all get booked better, we all get paid a little better, and it's like, just some affirmative time for us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me about your project, The Future. I am in love with it.
Yeah, absolutely, Melody.
Thank you. Again, this has been the 7th series. My name is Melody Brooks, and I'm here with Dani Darling. Thank you.